Good afternoon, this is Vicki. My name is Vicki Deedy, and I work for the City of Portland in the Office of Transportation, and I have been the project manager for Portland Streetcar since March of 1990. The Portland Streetcar is owned and operated by the City of Portland, as opposed to TriMet, which is our transit agency. And that has to do with the fact that the transit agency has, much more global, regional kinds of issues to work on. And the city really views the Portland Streetcar as part of its growth management strategy. And we have goals to provide and attract 15,000 units of new housing and 75,000 new jobs in the central city over the next 20 to 25 years. And so the streetcar provides a really high-quality transit service for central city circulation.
It connects some key neighborhoods. It connects downtown with Northwest 23rd and the Pearl District, with plans to extend it beyond there.
Northwest 22nd and Northrop. Legacy Good Samaritan Hospital stop.
It runs, in general right now, it runs from Northwest Portland at the Good Samaritan Hospital Complex, which is a large hospital and other buildings with clinics and doctors' offices, and then through a fairly dense residential area, an area that's industrial but changing every day, and then into what is we call the Pearl District, which is where the highest density of housing is going in, and then it runs through downtown to Portland State University.
Portland Streetcar operates in traffic. These are the tracks right here, and so it's also an auto lane. It's smaller trains, lighter weight, and it's really charming. The trains were made in Europe.
These are high-density urban neighborhoods with pretty narrow streets, and we wanted to be able to run the streetcar in mixed traffic, which light rail doesn't do. There was absolutely no interest from anybody working on this, from the Citizens Advisory Committee or the property owners, to work on a city-owned bus line. We could not have attracted any private capital with a bus line, but we did and could with providing rail.
Northwest 22nd and Lovejoy.
The streetcar in Portland, the first streetcar line that went in, was really part of it was financed as in agreement with the developers.
The capital costs for that line between Good Samaritan Hospital and Portland State University cost $56.9 million, and that includes a maintenance facility and 7 streetcars. And the primary sources of funds were $30 million from a bond sale that was backed by net proceeds from city-owned parking garages. There was also $8 million in tax increment financing from urban renewal areas, and $10 million from a local improvement district, a one-time assessment on property owners within a defined district specifically for capital construction. When we first started this, I'm not sure the transit agency, TriMet, thought we knew what we were doing. But since then, they've become a big fan because we really complement the regional transit system. We cross the MAX lines and we cross the bus mall. So there are just really good, ample opportunities for people to transfer off of one mode onto another.
We also have the Portland Streetcar, which is really a circulator in the downtown area through the Pearl District, and it's actually seen as a economic development tool. That's what they think the primary thing. They got density in those communities because of the Portland Streetcar.
The Pearl District is like a neighborhood association, and the River District is like a planning, but we kind of all talk about it as the Pearl District. And it used to be raw vacant land that was old railroad yards. And back when the railroads real estate arm owned it, they had a master plan of providing about 3 million square feet of office space, and that does some pretty nasty things to your transportation system and to your city, so close to downtown, because you have to build pretty wide roads to get everybody in at 8 o'clock and everybody out at 5 o'clock, and by 5:30 it's dead. So the owners of that property came to the city and said, we think there's a better thing to do here. We should not be competing with the downtown office market, but we should provide a new neighborhood for housing for all sorts of people who live in the city. So that's what's been going on. There is a formal development agreement between the city and Hoyt Street Yards, which owns the majority of that vacant land in the Pearl District. And what in that development agreement, there's a series of contingent relationships that are defined, such that if the city agreed to take down the Lovejoy ramp, which was an old viaduct that ran across off grade through that area, then the Hoyt Street Properties people would increase their minimum housing densities from from 15 units an acre to 80. And if we provided for the streetcar, that they would increase that minimum housing density more. If we provided some park space, the increased densities went up, and it follows with the land through time. So we've always had this link between the land uses and the kind of development that we want to foster up there and a streetcar. In 2001, there were probably a half a dozen housing housing projects that were up. And since that time, I bet there's another 7 to 8 who are now either done or under construction in the Pearl District. Every single one of those projects, be it a for rent or for sale, they all use the streetcar in their marketing for the projects. And all of the for sale projects have been sold out before they're done. It's not that that kind of development might not have occurred without us, but it's certainly gone faster, and it is more dense than I think anyone expected. The other part of it is that it allows the developers to reduce the amount of structured parking that they're providing, because all of these buildings have underground parking and then ground floor retail or ground floor active uses and then housing above it, which is a real standard model in the city of Portland for urban development. And in the parking, their ratios are averaging about 1 per unit.
My mother-in-law has a condominium in the Pearl District, and you can sit there and watch the streetcar, and just purely from not even thinking about transit, it's just a neat thing. Just it looks neat. It's fun to watch. Most of the time when we're there, it's almost surprising how many people are on it. Because you think, wow, it's 10 o'clock at night. Who's really on the streetcar? Well, it does get used, and part of my opinions are based on its utility, and partly just because it's a neat thing. But it really has, in the big picture, it's a key part of that district.
We sell sponsorships for our cars and our stops, and all of our cars are sponsored. Almost all of the stops are sponsored. The last quarter of ridership surveys that we did indicate that we will serve about 2.2 million people during this next year, and I have people coming to town to see it like crazy. I mean, I think there's been maybe 14, 15 different cities who have been here.
Oh yeah.
Watch out.
We are in the midst or almost done with construction of about a 0.6 mile extension from Portland State University down to the banks of the Willamette River. And service on that line will start on March 11th, 2005. And then as soon as that River Place extension is done, we've got another extension planned for about another 0.6 miles down to Southwest Gibbs. We have a really unique kind of structure in that the City of Portland contracts with Portland Streetcar Inc., which is a private nonprofit organization that was formed for a single purpose, and that was to implement Portland Streetcar. On that board are representatives from all the institutions and the property owners and private citizens along the line. And they really guide how we do things, when we do things, help us get the money, deal with political issues. In addition to that, we've had a Citizens Advisory Committee that's been in, I think we had our first meeting like in May of 1990, and they still meet every month, and they again provide guidance to the city about how the things should work and how it should affect neighborhoods.
And now Minneapolis is looking at doing such a line. What kind of lessons have you learned that you might pass on to other communities looking at doing this kind of transit line?
Well, I think you have to have your local champions on the political level. I think you have to develop really good partnerships with developers and property owners and neighborhoods and businesses. And if you can do all that and link it to the kind of development you want, I think you can really foster and support high-density mixed-use development in the urban core.
Right now, it's not really a system. It's one streetcar line that connects some destinations. But as it grows, it will become a system, become more integrated with the light rail line. As we're looking at extending the streetcar across the river over here to the Lloyd District, that connection will tie it more directly into the light rail and really make it a system.
Northwest 21st and Northrop. Sponsored by Penn and Northrop Station. Request to stop. Press yellow strip or door button.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that anybody who happens to be out on the West Coast and gets to Portland, I would highly recommend riding the streetcar. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's really a whole different feeling when you can ride it and see what's going on.
Public transit on public access, that's on transit.